Hey, what's up, family? This is Doug Reid of the Let's Go Show. Very special guest today because this gentleman was the very first guest that I had on my Facebook Live when I was doing it on Friday nights. Tremendous story, uh, and I guarantee you, you'll be amazed at his story. You will appreciate his story. You'll appreciate even his path. My man Gee Reid. Gee Reid, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
Man, Doug, how you feel, man? It's great to see you. It's great to see you.
Yes, sir. I mean, last time we got together was down at in Philadelphia, in South Philly at Chicky and Pete's. But you
Yeah,
know,
man. That's our first meeting. That was our
yeah. So and I learned a lot about you during that time, and we gotta actually revisit that. Just to, always good to break bread with brothers, man. But
absolute.
let me ask you, man, just right off the top, and we'll get into your story. But who is G Reid?
Oh man, that's a beautiful question. G Reid is a humble guy, a very appreciative guy of all the things that that's happening in my life right now. You know, there's so many people that I know that I wish had the opportunities that I have right now in front of me, and I'm staying patient, um, taking my time, trying to find my success. And, I like to look at everything that's going on with me as a total blessing. So,
Yeah, and you definitely have a remarkable story, and just tell us a little bit about you know where you grew up. Uh, I know there's some circumstances that happened in your life, and you could kind of expound on that. But
yeah,
tell us about where you grew up, where you went to school, and therefore.
sure. I come from South Philly. It's crazy because I just moved back to South Philly. But I'm from South Philly. I've been here, in my earlier years. Grew up with both my parents. I come from a big family. I got a ton of brothers and sisters. I'm the youngest of everybody. Uh, but I had a situation when I was younger. Um, I was hanging out with some friends back in 1991. Well, people, at the time I thought were my friends. And one of the guys that I was with, he wound up shooting somebody and he
Mm,
killed the guy. And although I was like 15 years old, um, and everybody was like adults, I got lumped into it. The legal system is a tough system, particularly in Pennsylvania. It's a very tough system. But I got lumped into it, and ultimately, which even to the day I have problems trying to understand it, but what they did with me, because I wasn't a person who actually did it, they charged me with conspiracy, and they held me accountable as a child. They held me accountable for the actions of an adult, even though it's nowhere and no area of life where that's done.
yeah.
They do it in criminal law. So I was actually condemned as a child, sentenced to life without the possibility of parole at the age of 15, 16 years old. So,
Let me ask you real quick, because I'm one too. As coming up, I remember just hanging around older guys, you know, and hanging around them. Do you feel like you were seeking anything for um, just to be a part of the group, or trying to get wisdom because they were older? I mean, how did that kind of fall into place?
it's funny because I thought about that over the years, like throughout my life. Like, it didn't felt like it was a normal thing for me to be around older people because all my brothers are older than me, right? So I'm the youngest. I have brothers that's actually old enough to be my father. My father is actually in his 90s, so I came along a little later, and kind of like late in the game. So Um, I was always around older people, so it was not really a issue. Even though these are guys that I knew from my neighborhood and stuff like that. And how I specifically got to be with them on this night, I was actually watching one of their sons.
Wow.
Um, they had offered to take me out to get me something to eat.
Mm.
And when I explained to them that I didn't have any money, they offered to treat me. That's how I wound up in their company and stuff like that. Initially, that's how that happened.
And that, of course, led to, somebody getting shot. And almost like the story, up in New York, right?
Which one?
Um,
The
the oh wow, what they call it?
the Central Park Five.
Yes, Central Park Five almost.
That was the. I mean, it wasn't that similar. I mean, they had a whole situation. I think the only thing that's maybe similar is the way the cases were treated
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a rush to judgment and stuff like that. Because I believe in that case, there was a crazy rush to judgment, and they went all out their way to convict these kids of something that they had nothing to do with. It's similar like in Pennsylvania, like when you get into these situations and you don't have any knowledge of the system, it could be really detrimental to anything. And if you don't have the money, if you don't have the connections and stuff like that,
And I
you
can only
it's
imagine it at
you're
15
going through a
years old.
process. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had no, so that was my first time I actually evolved in the system. I've never been in any trouble before a day in my life. No juvenile. I was in school. I had a little after school job. I was okay. And I
yeah,
made some poor decisions in terms of the people. Any mistakes that I made, it was definitely surrounding who I chose or who I considered to be my friend. And you got to be really careful with that attributing something like that to somebody because people you heard the saying like everybody that helps you is not a friend and everybody that fights you is not your enemy.
that's true.
And but you got to be really careful who you designate as a friend because there's a big responsibility that comes along with that. And even though I used to, as young coming up in an urban environment, I may have been around people who were doing certain things, but I always separated it in my own head. Like, okay, well, they may be doing this. The only thing I have to worry about is what I do,
Yeah,
but it doesn't work that way.
yeah, yeah.
In life, it doesn't work that way. Uh, if
And
you
I can
with
only
somebody and
and
they
let me
do
ask you this.
something, now,
And I can only imagine as a 15-year-old, like you said, kind of wrong place at the wrong time. And then the consequences, the seriousness of the event that happened. But at 15, I'm trying to recall at 15 what I was doing. Of course, sports back then. But, like, and you said life was, as a teenager, maybe hanging around some older guys, but you were just living your life as a teenager.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden, this ball drop, this ball drop, and now, you're looking at conspiracy. And I already know how the conspiracy work. I mean, working in that side of a prison for 25 years and at the height of the 1986 crack law, I seen a lot of conspiracy cases with that. And those conspiracy cases with those young men, and I say young men because the average I would probably say was probably 6 to 8 years because they didn't tell,
yeah,
and the feds have a certain way in how they deal with that. And of course, like I said, all the pressure not only on yourself, on your family, then you
mm,
got to look at, having the money to pay for lawyers. I
yeah.
mean, kind of walk me through that as you being charged. Uh, how did that situation go?
Yeah, so like I remember when I found out the police was looking for me. I told my mom what happened and stuff like that, and told her I had nothing to do with it, and I was just up the street when it happened. So we voluntarily I went down to the police station with my mom, talked to him and stuff like that, and let him know that I had nothing to do with it. But then they said they had a witness who claimed that I did have something to do with it. And I said, okay. The lady claimed that she seen three dark-skinned males. And even though I'm not dark-skinned, I don't think it really matters when you don't have the right representation. So I was ultimately charged with conspiracy, convicted of second degree, which is, you don't have to be the person on the second degree. You don't have to be the person who actually pulls the trigger. You're held liable for the actions of the person that did pull the trigger, which is, like I said, is like a weird thing because I was a kid and an adult had did this and they held me accountable for the actions of an adult, which is a really strange area of life, law, and stuff like that. But that's how they ultimately did it. So I was relying on court appointed attorneys. My family didn't have like the financial means to get me a lawyer at that time, or at least they didn't think that it was necessary because I think that they believed, as well as I did, that the truth will prevail, and if
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't happen like that, you know.
And then how many? And, we kind of talked about this. Uh, once you said 15 years old, now you hit with it. So now we got to deal with it. Like you said, court appointed attorneys. How many attorneys did you actually go through?
Through the course, so I was incarcerated for a period of a little over 26 years, close to 27 years, right? So I've been home for 5 years now, and it's been. We'll get to that, but um, during the course of my whole time trying to prove my innocence and trying to establish my case, um, from my trial lawyer, then I had about 3 or 4 appellate lawyers, and then I met Jared Casher. Jared Casher he's a great guy. He was practicing out in New Jersey, and he was a civil lawyer. He wasn't even a criminal lawyer. And I had a lawyer who was I had an attorney. Her name was Carol McHugh. She was like a excellent writer. She would write your case up in such a way that would make you look at your own case differently. That's how good she was in terms of what her ability to write stories and put your case in a certain kind of context. But she was no good in court. She wasn't a verbal lawyer. Her presentation in court was, she always had to work with somebody who could present the case in court. That's not her strong suit. That wasn't her strong suit. So when Jared came on board, he believed in my case. I had some people talk to him, and he believed in my circumstances. I didn't know he was a civil lawyer at the time, though. But I had Carol McHugh was doing the writing, so that was all out the way, and I just needed somebody to represent everything in court.
How was that
And
first meeting with him?
oh, he came to listen. He came to see me all the time too. It was crazy. He gave me his own personal cell phone number. I would call him. It was just such a like a light in a dark place. Like he was really there for me, and I never forgot that. It's amazing how he came in and he never asked me for a dime, and he worked for at least, I think I met him in um mid I got out to, so I had to meet him around like 2012 or something like that,
So you
maybe.
had been down for a while,
Yeah, I was already down for a while.
and now you
He
got this
worked
guy.
he worked with me for about 7 years, I believe, something like 7 or 8 years, fighting me, trying to get me out and stuff like that. And then it happened, and I was, you know, one of the questions that you ask yourself when you're in those type of situations, will you ever make it out? And the day that I found that I was actually going to make it out, it was like a relief. Like it felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders. Um, it was an amazing feeling. Just the process getting transferred out to I think they moved me to the OSU, which is an outside unit. I was at Graterford at the time, so they
Right.
moved me to an outside unit where I could kind of like, it's like a step down process. But one of the things that I realized when I got out to the outside unit was that you realize, like, because prison will make you think a certain way, like it crafts your thinking in a way that you don't really, you think that you're on point, but you're really not. Isn't some things you may have a good understanding of, but because everything is like urgent and your thinking is, it causes your thinking, and like the more time you spend in prison, subtly it happens over a period of time where you get pushed to the left each day, each hour. You're getting moved a little bit, but you can't see it until you get back into a normal situation. And then you think about how some of the thoughts and how you used to think, and all that. You're like, man, I was really off there, man.
Yeah, and
Um,
that kind of brings me to, because I know one of the questions, even when I met you, thinking about the circumstances, 15 years old, being faced with a charge, you know, as an adult,
mhm.
knowing your innocence, family knowing your innocence, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I'm like, gee, like, how did you get through that process? You know, the perseverance and the resilience. Like, what drove you to say, look, I'm gonna get through this process?
Well, I can tell you this. Um, I remember, um, when I first went to Graterford, right? It was such a relaxed environment that it could really, really distract you and pull you off of what you should actually be concentrating on. It was almost like a microcosm of what the streets were like. It was really, really crazy. Like, in terms of, they used to call it the party. That's how crazy it was. Like, I was up Camp Hill, and they would say, "Where you getting transferred down?" I'm trying to go back down to the party.
Hmm.
That's what they used to call it, the party. I'm like, man. And when you got there, it was so open, and it didn't even feel like, my first few years at Graterford didn't even feel like I was locked up. That's how crazy it was.
You know what?
Um,
I'm gonna stop you right there because because I want to reflect on something. Uh,
mhm.
and I go back to me working in the federal prison. I
Yeah,
started in South Jersey at a
yeah,
medium, FCI Ferreton, a medium prison. Uh,
okay,
you know, two guys in the cell locked down. Then I transferred what has been classified at that particular point in the 90s as one of the largest federal prisons in the United States of America, which was Fort Dix.
mm,
At one point, we had 5,000 inmates.
yeah,
This is not the typical prison. It's barracks. Like
yeah,
some of the rooms, you had a 2-man room, you had a 3-man room, and then we had, no, 2-man and 4-man, and then you had a 12-man room.
yeah,
And the guys said the same things. Like, you know, you talking about guys being transferred, like you said, it's a process. You know, as they
yeah,
get down on their time, they're transferring, you know, from a maximum to a medium to a low. Fort Dix was classified as a low.
mm,
And when it got there, they were in disbelief. Guys were in disbelief because it was so open, and of course, so many different things was going on. I used to tell people, like, in a prison is like a city within a city. Of
yeah,
course, you don't have a lot of things on the outside, but it still was a city because everything, access, everything was still there. Not like we had a freedom. Of course, that was a thing. But I mean, I can visualize what you're saying is the party because it wasn't the normal circumstances that you would think would happen to a prison.
yeah. I'm saying, well, I think also, to add to that, I think it was just a culture of what Graterford was like at that particular time. And it was a big prison. It was really outdated. So and it was a culture like, the inmates ran everything at the time and stuff like that. And, I mean, ultimately that changed while I was there, but initially it was like a really open situation, and it was for a maximum security prison to operate like that was a little crazy, but that's how it was initially.
So
Um,
you would probably say what the first 5 years? I mean, of course, 15, going into your 20s.
yeah. Well, no, I was initially at they had transferred me to Camp Hill
Mm-hmm.
for a classification, and then once I turned 18, they allowed me to come out in population. They had me on lockdown because I was so young, and they didn't have me mixing with because they was grown men, so I was just still like a kid. So once I turned 18, though, they asked me where I wanted to go. I said, send me back to Graterford. I wanted to be as close to home, so if people wanted to visit me or I could stay like close, then that was my main goal at that particular time. I didn't want to inconvenience my family by having to go all the way upstate to try to see me. I thought that just being close was something that needed to happen.
Yeah. And you still now you got this resilience, you got this perseverance, and So what was a driving force behind that?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, guys. So once initially I remember writing some letters to my attorney, right? And he trying to formulate some response, trying to check on my case, asking what was the status of it. I knew nothing about the law. I knew nothing about the process or anything. I mean, zero knowledge, nothing. And he never wrote me back. And I wrote him again. I didn't hear anything. Then I wrote him again. He finally responded after several months, and he told me that he was unaware that I did not know that my case was denied back in February. And was in June. So he said, your case was put in storage. And I'm like, my case was put in storage. How is that possible when I'm serving a life sentence? I've been sentenced to die in prison. Like, how do you mean my case is put in storage? At that moment, something ignited in me where I said to myself, I said, there's never going to be a time when something happens in this case when I'm not aware of it. So I went on a long journey of studying, trying to educate myself, trying to become my first defender. Like, because I felt like, a lot of people was hurting because I was away, but I felt like I was hurting the most because I had to lock up. At the end of the day, no matter what happens, win, lose, or draw, I'm gonna be stuck holding the bags. So I had to be I couldn't expect for somebody to fight harder for me than I was fighting for myself. It just didn't make sense. So I began learning the law. I got with a couple guys who were on that same track. We formed a team where we would study together. We would share information together. We had dubbed ourselves the firm. We would meet down the law library every single day. We would study, write, and learn. And
Wow.
sometimes I would study in 12 hours a day, just just so I could try to. And there was a lot of trials and errors that I was making, but you're gonna expect that because it takes some time to actually get that stuff. Once you get it, you got it, but it takes a long time to actually learn it because it's really complicated,
So what
especially when
was
you're not in front of a professor or a law professor and stuff
yeah?
like that. Just learning this on a muscle.
So
So,
what was the breakthrough?
huh? The
What was the
breakthrough,
yeah?
the
What
breakthrough for me was um, feeling like no one had my best interests at heart, like the attorneys and stuff like that. So, and because I didn't know anything, I knew that I had to learn it. In order for me to help myself or help other people to help me, I got to be able to know what the hell is going on. So that was the breaking point was me becoming knowledgeable of what the situation was to the point where I can help myself and not knowing. Like I had to remove myself from the not knowing part.
And then
And
some laws change as well too, right?
yeah, some laws changes. I mean, like for me, like and the law changed in terms of juveniles over the years too. I'm not sure you're familiar with that, but they was working on that for 10, 15 years. They had banned, they had declared it was unconstitutional. Like in Florida, they do different stuff in different states. But part of the reason how I got out was they had initially said it was unconstitutional to execute somebody who was mentally retarded. And then they took that case and all the reasoning that they used, I believe it was called the Atkins case. And they used the reasoning that the courts had said the reason why, like, because the brain wasn't fully developed and this and that. And so they transferred that over to juveniles, and then they said it was unconstitutional to execute a juvenile, somebody who was under the age of 18. Then they expanded on that. And then this is taking years. This is not happening like really quickly. It's going from years and years. Then they said it was unconstitutional to sentence a juvenile to life in prison for a non-homicide offense, because they was actually giving juveniles in Florida and other states life sentences for like a robbery or stuff like stuff that where nobody lost their life and they were sentencing them to die in prison. It's unbelievable, but that's what they was doing. So they had this, the United States Supreme Court actually banned that, and then it came down to what they was going to do with juveniles who were actually convicted of murder, because the same reasonings that exist for why they banned the death penalty for juveniles, why they banned the life sentences for non-homicide, all of that is still, it was the same reasoning that applied. So ultimately, they ruled that it was unconstitutional to mandatorily sentence a juvenile to a lifetime in prison without taking into certain considerations before at sentencing, like their age, their level of involvement, and all that kind of stuff, which they wasn't doing none of that. Like simply because I got convicted of second-degree murder, it was a mandatory automatic life sentence, even though I had no background or none of that was taken in consideration of my age, none of that. So they actually threw my sentence out because of that. And the judge who had my actual innocent claims, she wanted me to go get my sentence first before she actually came back and ruled on my claims. They wound up letting me go before that happened. So that's why I'm like actually still in litigation. Even though I've been home, I've been waiting on this decision for 5 years now.
Wow. So how did that feel? Now you're getting, you talk about the case down in Florida, because now we got some segue. I mean, we got some things that are breaking through, even though it was a process. Like you said, it took years to come. But how did that feel? You putting in the pills, you're meeting with the guys, studying your case, really becoming familiar with the law. How did that feel when you start hearing about certain cases and things being unconstitutional? How did that feel?
You get encouraged, but you never really feel like it's going to happen, because the way the system is set up is nothing like they guarantee you nothing other than the fact that you're going to be where you're going to be, where you're at, you're going to be there. They guarantee that. So at time, like the truth is that at times you feel like you're going to make it, and then at times you feel like you're going to die in prison. So it's like it goes up and down, but it's important to stay encouraged. You got to stay encouraged, because at the end of the day, if you just lay down, you do know that nothing is going to happen. So it's important that you always, we used to call it like putting your hat in the ring. It's important that you always got something going on legally or something. You gotta do something to keep your issues and your fight for a better day, you got to keep it up in their face as much as you can. So that's what we did.
So what law actually changed your circumstances?
Um, there was a United States Supreme Court case that banned. Well, it didn't ban. It just said that it was unconstitutional um, to sentence juveniles mandatorily to life sentence, and because my sentence was a mandatory sentence, they they said it was unconstitutional and they threw it out. But it was 26 years later, though, after the fact. So they were saying that I should have never had that sentence to begin with. So that's what they were saying. United States Supreme Court ruled on it, which was a crazy set of events that actually brought that into existence. So if Obama was never elected president, then certain judges would have never been put on the court. And if those judges wasn't on the court, like Sotomayor and the other judges that they had, then the law would have never passed. If it came under the Trump administration, I would have never been sitting there.
Wow.
But the judges they got, they're more conservative, they're more hardcore. You got, people like Clarence Thomas. You had Alito up there at the time. And then you had some other judges that was like gun ho in terms of like criminal, like it was real conservative. They don't give anything to prisoners or people who even deserve it. They don't do it.
Yeah, that's why it's so important. I mean, we think about, of course, you always think about your right to vote, but
that's why it's important to vote.
Yeah, and you have to do your homework. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
Even from the local to the state to the feds, like, and I tell on myself, where I'm at in Jersey, we just had a local election. I go to vote, but I'm be honest, I didn't even know who they were.
Yeah,
And we got a lot of people like that, and that's on all levels. So we have to do, and I'm talking to myself personally, when we make these choices for these people to be in office, we have to do our homework to find out
absolutely.
if they represent our
Absolutely.
interests. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? So,
Just,
oh,
every time an election come around, I vote. I vote, and because I pay attention to a lot of this stuff because of where I came from. I'm always like in the know as to who's doing what and who ain't doing what. So I'm always like familiar with it.
yeah,
Like with the election with that just came up with Dr. Oz and
Fetterman.
Fetterman. So Fetterman believed in second chances. So many people that I knew that would have never had the opportunity to come home. He revamped a lot of stuff with the commutation board. Fetterman was a good guy, and I know he suffered some things in terms of his medical with the stroke and stuff like that. Um, but
Yeah,
I didn't see Dr. Oz as somebody who he wasn't even a politician.
yeah. I mean,
I didn't see him as
yeah, we got the celebrity. You know what I mean? Like you
Here's the
said,
funny thing. I live in South Philly. I live in a all Italian neighborhood, and I came out my house one day in my apartment, and he was standing in front of the door. I'm like, "Is that Dr. Oz? What are you doing down here?" Then found out that he was running for Senate. I said, "Okay, he out here campaigning." I said, "All right, it's really funny."
yeah, they got to go back. They got to get those votes. Uh,
Absolutely.
and I mean, speaking of Dr. Oz and celebrities, man, you familiar with some guys that's doing some amazing things like Wallow. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Wallow's doing a great job out here.
and
He's doing
how did
a job.
where'd you meet him and how's that relationship?
Oh, me and Wallow, we met at Graterford. One day I was in a law library. He came up to me and he was like, uh he, we had a mutual friend that he was like one of my old cellies had got transferred to like Dallas, and that's where Wallow was at initially. And they became cellies and he used to always talk about me. So when Wallow was transferred down to Graterford, he seen me. I think somebody called my name and he recognized the name and he was like, "Yo, your name is." And then we just started talking and we developed a friendship from there. He was a really great guy, man. Wow.
Yeah.
High energy. He was high energy and
It's still high energy, but now
he
he
was
getting
high
paid for
energy
it.
man.
He
Yeah.
getting paid for that high energy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He
Yeah.
did it. His transition has been remarkable. I'm gonna tell you what I tell everybody about Wallow is that everything that he said, everything that he's doing now is everything that he said that he was going to do when he was locked up. He had a plan
Mm.
and he executed that plan. He didn't waver from it. Now, things he might have added to it as he was going, but he's the like that stuff we talk about the book of life and all the stuff. He used to write down his goals, his dreams, his aspirations. He used to do all of that, you
Wow.
know, and he stuck to it,
Yeah.
and it worked out for him. I'm really happy that he reached that level of success. He deserved it.
So let's do this then. I mean, now that you made that statement, that transition. Uh, what is G doing now? What are your plans for the future?
Oh man, so I'm out here. I'm working several jobs, like I was telling you. I'm working several jobs because like the way I looked at it was like I had to I lost a lot of time, and it's not like I was somewhere working on a pension or something like that. So in my mind, I got to build my own pension. I got to make it happen on my own. So I was fortunate enough to get into some really nice situations, and I'm able to do it. I got like 4 jobs, so I'm able to do it because I'm able to control the time with at least 3 of them. And
Wow.
it's about I don't have no specific time where I got to show up and stuff like that. As long as I could get there and get it done, so that helps a lot. And one of my jobs is actually on my block where I live at, so it's really convenient. So
Yeah.
um, me, I'm just in terms of my future plans, I hope to one day be married. I don't have any children yet, so maybe that could be part of my future. Marry, get some stability. I have it, but I'm also on my own. You know, I've been on my own since I've been home. I had relationships and stuff like that, close people by me, but I've never been married. I don't have any kids, so you know, I only have the responsibilities that I create for myself, and
Yeah.
I'm looking to hopefully when the market lighten up a little bit, looking to buy me a house and stuff like that, and continue on my journey. Like I help a lot of people. I still do paralegal work for some of the guys that I know deserve it. People reach out to me, so I try to be helpful. Guys that I know that's getting out, I try to support them. Make sure they got something when they coming out the door. So one of the things that I do, I go into my own pocket and I give to these guys, the people that I know that deserve it. Make sure that I take them shopping, give them money and stuff like that. And I'm so happy to be in that type of situation where I could do that because
Wow.
it's you got to play it forward. Like so many people did so many things for me that helped me get to where I'm at. I feel duty bound to do that in kind to do it to other people who I know need it. So
Wow.
they actually gave me I actually got the Reentry Star of the Year award because of that kind of work and stuff like that. It
Congratulations.
was
Yeah.
that came
Definitely.
out of nowhere. I got that a couple months ago. They had a big thing over at Eastern State Penitentiary
Yeah.
and gave me this award. So I was really happy about that.
Congratulations. Definitely.
Thank you.
Well, G, I mean, uh, I appreciate you coming back again, man. I appreciate your vulnerability, your honesty, um, and just you know, I can really appreciate your journey, and I think that's where we as a people kind of lose touch because we gotta have the empathy for people that's been through things, even
Oh,
if like yours, like you said, it's unfortunate the way it happened. But even as you go, you look for jobs, you come back out here, uh,
Mm,
you're establishing yourself again. You even made the statement like it's your duty now to reach back out to those guys to help them. So
mm,
I really appreciate everything that you're
mm,
doing, man, and coming into this space to tell your story.
mm. I'm gonna say one also thing I wanted to mention to you, coming back out here though, it's been a really eye opener. There's a lot of things that changed. Of course, the technology has grown so much, but the level of violence that exists out here with these kids and stuff like that is really unprecedented. For and they don't know what I know, because if they knew what I knew, they would put them guns down for sure. And it's like it's a hell of a thing to see these kids just throwing their lives away, killing each other and stuff like that. So every opportunity I have to like to talk to these kids to try to steer them on a better path or try to give them some insight from what I've been through, I never fail in taking those opportunities. I try to share my story as much as I can
Mm-hmm.
as a learning tool so these kids could somehow see what this shit is all about.
Yeah,
Excuse my language, it's just
no, I
it's
get it.
just crazy. It's just a crazy situation. Like,
It's
you
hard to
know,
watch.
it's hard to watch, but the crazy, because I tell people this all the time, the punishments that exist are not visible enough. Like, a prison exists, but you don't know what it's like to be locked in a cell and told what to do for the rest of your life until it's happening. They're not visible enough. You got to illuminate those punishments more. The consequence need to be more brighter. They need to be able to see this shit more in order for them to really get it. Because they not getting it until they get there, and then it's too late.
Wow.
In most cases. So I try to be proactive and try to get to them before. And it's hard though, because when you knee deep in those streets, it's hard to pull them out because
Yeah.
you know
They only see
you
it one way. I mean, I mean,
only see it one way.
and I mean, just like consequences is not a factor.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Really
when you deep in it, no matter what you're doing or making money or whatever the cases is, it's just totally living for today.
not.
Consequences is not part of the equation. And I think that's
Right.
exactly what you're saying. So we got one more thing, man. There's one thing that I do on the Let's Go show. I call it the finale. Uh, I'll say one word,
Mhm.
and then you just give me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Uh, I got about 10 words, and you just first thing come to your mind. Because I love doing it because it's an educational thing too that I love about it.
Absolutely.
And I wrote some words down that um, I'm curious of your response.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Resilience,
Resilience, patience. Like, you have to be you have to be patient and have this stick to itness and then never give up attitude. And that's what I think of when I hear resilience. You got to have that
appeal,
long process,
focus,
focus, necessary. You got to
independence.
stay focused. Independence is beautiful to have it. I mean, like you need that independence. You need a certain level of independence. I mean, we all need help uh, in different areas of our lives, but it's important to have a certain level of independence so you can move a certain way. And it allows you to have a certain kind of freedom when you have a certain level of independence. If you always bogged down with other things and other people, it may stop you from doing what you need to do.
Philly,
Change, man. It's not the same. too much violence. I think when I think of Philly, I think of violence. Um, Even though you have spots where they're good spots, but we need to come together in Philly.
Justice.
And it's important. And I just wish that, is the same speed that they use to lock people up as the same speed they use to give people that justice. It shouldn't take no 40, 50 years to 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 turn something around that's not right. You know, it's like I tell people all the time, the pathway to prison, the doors are covered with oil. You slide right up in that joint. But the pathway out is covered with tar. It's a slow process. It's hard to get through. It's hard to get out that door. It's covered with tar.
Wow.
But going in, that shit is slick with oil. It got all type of grease down there on that doorway. It slides you right on up in there.
Wow.
Quick.
All right, we got a couple more.
Okay.
Brian Stevenson.
He's an amazing guy, man. I love Brian Stevenson, man. He's amazing. He is an amazing guy, man. I'm telling you, he's amazing. I wrote him several letters since I've been home. I look for the day where I could actually meet this guy. He is an amazing human being, man.
Impact.
Um, Impact. I mean, I'm impacted by a lot in life. The one word I think of, and when I think of impact, I think of like how relevant the impact is to my life, like how important it is. Like there are moments in life where it separates you from, you'll know, like things will never be the same. Like things that happen in your life, you know that from that moment, things will never be the same. So when I think of impact, I think of like the relevancy and who's creating it for me. But what is creating this impact is that could be an amazing thing, but it also could be not so amazing. Depends on what type of impact it is. Like,
Right.
but it's important that we stay conscious though.
All right, I got one last one. Happiness.
Man, I'm finally happy. Um, it's a blessing. When I think about happiness, I'm thinking about blessings. Because I'm gonna tell you something. When I was away, I experienced every single emotion except for happiness. It was so fleeting that I could not maintain it. There were times where like I felt happy, but I could not hold on to it. It was only until I came home, whereas though I began to feel like a genuine level of happiness. Just like I could really smile genuinely, I could really laugh genuinely. Happiness is so important that you cannot surrender that to nobody or nothing. You got to maintain your happiness. That's a priceless, very, very priceless thing. You cannot give that up. If you lose your happiness, man, you're losing like everything. You gotta maintain that.
Well, this has been the Let's Go Show with Doug Reid and my special guest, Giovanni Reid, man. I appreciate you so much, man, coming on here. Uh, I know this podcast and people will see the video as well. I know they will be impacted. I know it would be a story they would, actually be attracted to. Um, but I'm going to ask you one. Well, I said that was the last thing, but what would be your words of wisdom that you would want to tell our listeners?
Mm. The don't give up. Life in life, we have our ups and downs. you know, but it's important that we always try to make sure that the good outweighs the bad. Our life is definitely what we make it. Um, you know, you got to surround yourself with the right people. You got to stay motivated. You got to stay encouraged. Um, so these are things like I remember you was saying like what motivates people to say let's go. Like, you know, it's the motivation, it's the encouragement, it's the things that we gotta be careful about the things that we allow into our lives because that can turn us one way or the other. So surround yourself with the right people, stay encouraged, make the best of every situation you in, and just don't never give up.
Yeah.
And life will work out.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Let's Go show. You know what I say? Peace, baby. We
Yes, sir.
are.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Doug.
Yes, sir.